You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Kismar and Tom Kinezic.
Are you getting tired of us yet? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Kismar.
And I'm Tom Kinezic. And Fran, I'm a little concerned why you think people are getting tired of us.
You know, since we've gone back to our once-a-week format, which we do for summers and we're planning on doing for winters during slow time, I'm kind of running out of things to talk about.
That's hard to believe. I think that's just not true.
Did you ever think you would hear me say I have nothing to talk about?
No.
I'm getting tired of hearing
myself. I think
myself.
you're getting lazy and don't want to have these conversations anymore.
I am a little lazy. I'm guilty of that too, but I'm getting tired of hearing myself.
Yeah. Well, you can always ask me about like what's going on in my life. There's only a few big things that have happened.
Yeah. I guess we could talk about you. that would be a change. So how's fatherhood? It's 2 months now.
Just shy of 2 months.
2 months.
But yeah, I'm so glad you asked.
Thank you for the prompt. I needed that.
I understand all the things that everyone's been telling me forever, and that it's terrible, but it's like the most rewarding thing you'll ever do. And that's really how I feel. Is like if I start listing off all these things, I'm like, man, I'm really complaining a lot about how I go into the bathroom and having to wake up all times of the night, and he's just crying all the time. But I wouldn't change any of it. It's awesome. It
is awesome. I almost made a really bad analogy. I almost said it's like going to war, and I was like, you know what? One, you've never been to war. Two, it's nothing like going to war. Like you. Yeah. But it can be really stressful, and you can be sleep deprived and lack of patience, and it can be stressful, but all for good. It's like now that I've started watching the Jordan documentary, I relate everything to The Last Dance. So it's kind of like, no, it's all things you need to do to get to that championship. Yeah. So
you're bringing up a documentary that's what, 3 months old?
3 months. Yeah, but I'm just getting around.
We still haven't talked about Tiger King. So
we'll save that for another episode. But we can make that a whole episode. But.
Yeah, I get what everyone's been saying, and it's just like it is incredibly stressful at times. And I give a lot of credit to my wife because I don't know how she gets anything done during the day. Because on like a Saturday or Sunday, I'll just say, hey, you go get whatever you need to do done, and I'll stay here and watch the kids, and I'll get this list of things that I want to do done, and I might get one done if any, and it's just like, yeah, I give her a lot of credit. She's carrying a lot of weight.
You know, I give all the credit in the world to my children's mother. Because she, you take for granted. I traveled a lot during that time. Like I was gone I traveled 3 to 4 months a year on business. Actually, after my first born was born, I was on the road for 2 weeks. 2 weeks after he was born.
Wow.
And you forget when you're at work that they're there. Because you get a break. You get to come to work. And I know it sounds funny, but work becomes a break. It really does. So it's you take that for granted because.
Yeah, it's on those rough mornings when I'll bring him downstairs early and kind of hang out, watch a little bit of YouTube or those kind of things, and like just make sure he's okay. Yeah. And then it's on the mornings when he's not great, and he's crying a lot, and it's like 8:30, and I'm like, okay, time to go see mom, and I get to go and nothing changes for him. But
all right, I'm going to admit something that I've never admitted out loud. All right, you ready for this? Although there's people that know I've never admitted this out loud. So when I worked at Princeton Nurseries when my children were young, in the winter, and you were salary, work started a half an hour later. So instead of having to be there at 7, you didn't have to be until 7:30. Well, all of those years when the kids were young, I went to work at 7 o'clock, and I took a half an hour, and I would read the paper and have coffee, and no one knew because no one was there. Yeah. And my boss came in one time. He's like, "Does your wife know that you don't have to be here till 7:30?" And I was just like, "Nope." I think I've grown as a father since then.
Yes,
I
would agree.
I think I can't believe you know what, our guest was asking us if I've ever edited a podcast for content, and we said no. This may be the first.
Yeah.
We have a couple days before we publish it.
I'm sure you're not the only one who's done that.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. I'm human. But you know, you look back at those sometimes and you're like, man, that was I feel bad about doing that. How can I make amends for that? And I think I've made up for that.
Yep.
I hope I have. At least I hope I have. I think I have. Have you gone back and listened to any of our old episodes of this podcast?
Not on purpose. I've had them pop up accidentally when I'm like get in my car, and then just an old episode just kind of comes on. But I haven't gone and listened to one on purpose.
You know, I was going to put a trailer together, and I went back. I was trying to find clips, and I was listening. Yeah, I can't listen to them. Like, listen to like the first like two, like, because we were going to do video at that point. The format was a little different. Man, I was like, ooh, yeah, I'm happy with these.
Yeah,
we've really grown a lot. So, what else is new? What else is going on? You got anything?
Well, this is more something bigger that's going on, not just with me, but a lot of people in our area, and that's. If you listen to some of our first episodes, you hear a lot about the Spotted Lanternfly, and there is a lot of Spotted Lanternfly sightings happening recently. So
I had my first this past weekend at my fiance's house. I walked onto the back deck, and there was one on the side of her house, and we killed it. And I did a search throughout the yard to see if I could come up with any more. And it's, you know, I couldn't find any more. But you know, where there's one, there's plenty more, and it's just hitting adult season now. So it's only going to get worse, I think. We're just starting to see it. I think in coming days and months, it's going to be a bigger issue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I know you saw one. We've heard of them being seen quite a bit more. I've seen some pictures from not too far away where there's quite a bit. And I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing a lot more. The important thing is, if you do see them, make sure that if you can, try and capture them and get a picture, report it to the USDA. That just helps them out knowing where these the spotted lanternfly is and is going, and they need as much help as they can get trying to get ahead of it. So
yes,
but yeah. So like we were saying, just report those sightings and contact your county extension agents as well. We need to stay ahead of this. It's only going to get worse.
Yes, it is.
Unless we, kind of like with COVID, you gotta follow the science and make sure we're taking all the right steps to stay as on top of it as we possibly can be.
Take all the precautions. I think with COVID, this has kind of taken a back seat because there were more pressing issues. But now that it's adult season and people are starting to spot them, I think we're going to realize it's a much bigger. I think we kind of forgot about it. It's going to turn up to be a much bigger problem this year than it was last year.
Yeah,
I think.
And I'm actually gonna. Where we are is kind of on the forefront of it, the edge of their range right now. Yeah. But Kathy, you probably have a bigger problem with spotted lanternfly than we do, I would imagine.
Yes, if you're on the forefront, we definitely have a bigger problem than you do right now. We are in the middle of it, so there's lots of them. Yes.
Worse this year than last year already? Are you seeing a huge difference?
Not so far. It's about the same as last year right now, but like you said, they're just starting to. Was not last week, but the week before was when we first started seeing the adults, and so we'll have a better idea. But we also participated in a USDA trial for trapping and for treatment of tree of heaven, and so hopefully that helped out some.
I think people forget how invasive tree of heaven is, and I can't go anywhere around here without seeing tree of heaven, to be honest. It's that big of an issue, and that's another issue that really, people know it's invasive, but I don't know that it was actively, like this proactively trying to get rid of it now. Mm-hmm. The spotted lanternfly is almost like a blessing in disguise because it's helping us fix other problems because of it.
That's true.
Yeah, I think it's nice to see some of that getting taken. Actually, it's bringing invasives to in general to the forefront, I think, and people are between that and the mystery seeds.
Yes, yeah.
Being mailed out. You didn't get any mail to you, did you?
No,
All right,
nothing that we didn't order. No weird seeds that we didn't order came to us so far.
Good.
Yeah, that should have been another PSA. We had is don't plant the mystery seeds.
Don't plant. Yes. Although I did see, the funny thing is, after that came out, I started Google searching, and this has been a problem for years. Like I found like Reddit threads going back 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
With people saying that they've been getting seeds, and they identified a lot of them, like, hey, this is wisteria, this is this. And people are like, oh, I'm just going to plant it and see what happens, and now it's funny how times have changed that now it's making national news. Like, hey, these strange seeds are just showing up on people's mailboxes, so don't plant them.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
It really
It's so strange.
And it's not like, hey, I just got mail. Someone mailed me money. Money's showing up in my mailbox. How awesome is this?
Yeah.
It's just strange
It's
seeds.
the Nigerian prince. He's mailing you money.
And what do you think? Is it because that we're connected to the environment, or we think about natives or ecology or plant communities, that even though we're horticulturists, gardeners, that we would think twice about planting them, but so many other people are like, hey, let's see what these grow into?
Yeah, I don't know if I think we're a little more in tune, especially we're dealing with natives, and a package shows up saying it's from China and it's seeds. That's a huge red flag to us. But not everyone. You have people that are just plant lovers, like, oh, seeds. Maybe it's vegetables. Maybe it's I'll plant these and see what I get.
And I think we always talk about education. I just think people don't know that invasives are an issue. I think like we obviously do, and once you get outside like the native plant circles, and especially outside the gardening circles, people were just completely blinded. We talked about Tree of Heaven before, and even when I was younger, before I really knew what it was, you'd be driving down the road and you're like, oh, there's the hedgerow along the highway, or that tree line. Well, a lot of times there's a ton of Tree of Heaven or all sorts of invasives in there, and I would venture to say it's like 95 out of 100 people driving by have no clue that's the case. It might even be more than that.
Yeah, I agree. And my fiance loves wisteria.
Yeah.
Loves wisteria. And I'm like, she's like, can we have wisteria? And I'm like, can we have this conversation another time? Just keep trying.
That's the hard part.
It is,
because they're for sale, right? You can go and buy them.
Yep.
So why can't I have one?
And
that's the hard part at the Arboretum too.
And you see them, and they're beautiful. You can't deny when they're in bloom how beautiful they are. It's a great thing to see, and it's hard to explain to someone that beautiful thing that's a plant is not a good thing, at least not here. And that's hard to convince people that. It's not as easy as it would think. Sometimes it's more emotional than it is scientific, and we have this conversation all the time. How do you overcome that? I don't know. Education, I guess, is the best thing you can do, but it's you're not going to convince everyone.
I think one of the challenges also is in this globalized economy that we have. And so I had a colleague who was talking about invasive plants, or complaining about a plant to her neighbor over the fence, and her neighbor is from Japan. And so she had to really think about how she described the problem with this plant that was an invasive from Japan to a person who is here from Japan. And so I think that that's a big part of the conversation that is missing also, is an understanding of the context of how it got here, that people did it, and that we can undo it, and the talk about plant communities and ecology, instead of just like so many times when I was involved with the Native Plant Society of New Jersey, it was, these plants are evil, they're bad plants. And I think that is problematic, that conversation.
Yeah, that doesn't help. That turns people, that's not getting someone to listen when you start off a conversation that way. And it's very similar. My fiance is from Europe, and a lot of the plants in her yard, it's like, oh, we had these in Poland. This reminds me of where I grew up or things like that. And how do you tell someone that's sentimental about that it's bad? You know, it's hard. It's a hard conversation to have. There has to be some kind of balance, strike some kind of balance, and I even have trouble finding that balance. But you know, because of what we do, yeah, we want to be 100% native. I fully support that. But is it feasible and is it possible? I don't know. I'm not. And there's some people that are very emotional that will take that argument to the grave, that you need to be, and some that are the exact opposite way. I don't know what that middle ground is, but we really haven't flirted with like
the ethics of it.
Maybe one episode we should have someone come on that's pro varieties and pro species and pro.
It wouldn't be hard to find someone.
No, it wouldn't. But that would be an interesting like round table. That would be good. Kathy, you want to come on for that one? You want to be part of that round
yes.
table? All right.
I would love to be a part of that.
That would be
we
great.
get that question all the time at the Arboretum because our landscape architecture and horticulture program does have a focus on sustainability and designing with native plants. And a lot of our gardens are native plant heavy, but we are not exclusively native plants. And we feel strongly that our students we're preparing students to go out into careers in horticulture, and not all of them are going to be working for native plant only companies. And so we need them to know other plants that they'll encounter in specs and in garden centers and get delivered to them. And if they're interested in restoration ecology, we think it's important for them to learn the invasives as much as the natives. So we struggle with that all the time. You know, what do we keep so that we can teach it? And you know, what are the policy? We're working on collections policy, and we're really thinking a lot and looking at what other gardens are doing about addressing the invasive plant issue, and also acknowledging that a lot of invasives are here thanks to public horticulture and plant exploration, and you know, we have to acknowledge that role too.
And you know, even we're dealing strictly restoration. We see specs come across all the time where every plant is a variety. Or it will be all straight species, and then all of a sudden they'll throw in Panicum virgatum, Shenandoah, you know, and it's just like, why? Like, what's the reasoning for throwing in that one?
And really, that's one of the reasons we started doing this.
Yeah.
And started doing the YouTube series that we kind of dropped the ball on, and I started picking back up yesterday. But it was one of the most rewarding things was we had a YouTube video that was about the difference between a straight species and a variety, and what is the actual difference between them. And I had a landscape architect, excuse me, it was a contractor actually called me up and said, "Hey, I got emailed your video and I thought it was really good, but I can't find it anymore. So can you send me the link because I want to send it to this landscape architect because they're putting in all these varieties and I don't think we should." And that was like a big, that's why we're doing this kind of moment. So it was really cool.
It's perfect. So we should probably ask Kathy to
I was going to say, before we go too much further, Kathy, we should probably, I first met you through New Jersey Native Plant Society, which you brought up before, and you were the president of that for many years, and really, on the accounts of my dad and Bob Swain and Bill Young and some other people were really involved in that organization. You had that organization, you took it from a fledgling and really had it take flight and go to not just the next level, but multiple levels beyond where it had been. And then you moved on, and now you're in a new role for the last couple of years. So I guess I'll let you introduce who you are and how you got where you are now, and what really led to there.
Thank you. So I'm Kathy Salisbury, and I'm currently the director of the Ambler Arboretum of Temple University. And at Temple, I also teach the woody plant identification course each semester for the landscape architecture and horticulture students. And Tom, I met you through the Native Plant Society of New Jersey, and Fran, I probably met you years and years ago. I worked at Greater Newark Conservancy in Newark, New Jersey, doing school gardening, community gardening, and building a 1.5 acre teaching garden in the middle of Newark. And we focused on natives in those cases too. And so I've known you for both for a long time, it seems.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah. And being involved with the Native Plant Society was eye-opening to me because I went to school for ornamental horticulture at Delaware Valley. It was college then, now it's university. But I went first for ornamental horticulture and floral crop production, so raising poinsettias and mums and, plants strictly as ornament, and never really thought about plants in sort of a plant community context or an ecological context or native, and didn't really think about native plants at all. And it was getting involved with the Native Plant Society. I wanted to learn more that really opened my eyes to not only the plants themselves, but the community of people around that are so passionate about it and so willing to teach you about the issues and to involve you in decision making and projects. And so it was really inspiring to me, and I was really lucky to be a part of all of that. So
it is like a cult.
It
It
is
is cult like.
And so I think, so you mentioned about my role at the Native Plant Society. So one thing that really struck me when I got involved with that was how black and white it seemed. Like people were either these plants are evil or just you can only plant native plants, and if you're not just planting native plants, sorry.
No, that's
our phones rang too many times.
Listen, the only reason our phone is
Which
even
reminds me, I need
unplugged.
to
No,
unplug.
it's unplugged.
Oh, you did it.
The only reason it's unplugged is because we were in this room doing a Zoom meeting. And before this, and the phone started ringing. So it's unplugged now.
I think my phone can not ring for 3 days, and then once I'm doing something like this, then it's some spam call. But when I got involved with the Native Plant Society, there was a lot of sort of it's black and white. You're either this or you're not with us. And I think what I tried to do is find those gray areas where we could involve other people, find our common grounds, and work towards expanding the choir. Because if you're just so black and white about everything, you're really just always preaching to your choir, and you're never really getting beyond that. And I think, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that's one of the things that I hated about those discussions is they were so black and white. And while I personally am like 100% native when I plant stuff, I'm very hesitant to plant things that aren't native, even though my wife will ask me to sometimes. But you can't be you can't exclude other people just because they don't conform. You need to get as many people on this train as possible, or it's never going to grow. And slowly bring them along to your side from where they are. You can't just say, "Oh, you're not doing this, so you're not allowed."
But I think people forget sometimes you didn't make the decision to go 100% native overnight. It wasn't like someone flicked a switch and you're just like, "All right, I'm doing this now. I'm all in." Yeah. There's an evolution to it, and you can't expect people to skip that evolution. You have to give them. You have to win them. You have to win them over.
Yeah, exactly. You have to make it appealing to them and what they actually like, because they might not care about pollinators or they might not care about birds. So you can't go to them and say, "Oh, native plants are so great because like you're killing so many birds because you're planting all these non-native stuff and you aren't providing the habitat." Well, they don't care about birds. You're not going to change their mind.
No, that you could get. Oh, they're going to the bathroom of my car, and I'm constantly cleaning, and I don't want birds.
Yeah.
How many
they're
times
so loud in the morning.
Yeah. They wake me up.
Yeah, you have to appeal to what is intriguing to them, and it might be something completely different, and that's how you get them on board. It's not by saying you're an idiot, you're not creating habitat. You need to. That doesn't work.
It's funny because I was going to ask you, with your background with the Native Plant Society and native plants, what influence did you have on the Arboretum? Because when I think of an Arboretum, I don't think of native plants. I really don't. So, but it sounds like you're trying to blur that line a little bit.
Yeah, we are. One of the goals of the Arboretum is to be a model. We're an outdoor classroom, and we want to be a teaching space, and we are a teaching space for our courses, but we're also a community resource. We're free and open to the public all the time, and we want people to come in and visit and become inspired. and because we have that responsibility or that mission, we want to make sure we're doing that responsibly. And so we have to think a lot about the plants that we have on display. And so we do, like I said, we do have some gardens that serve a dual purpose as stormwater management tools and retention, bioretention swales and that kind of thing. And we do focus on native plants, and we have a hierarchy of decision making. And is it native, and does it support our ecosystem or our plant community is definitely a part of the decision making process. Or, what are we trying to do with this plant, and is there a native plant that will accomplish that same thing? And if there is, then we lean towards that. But we do have collections, and we want to have representative collections of different types of plants. And so we have conifer garden, and so many of those aren't native. But we also educate about understanding how this plant behaves, and understanding that these plants have an impact on an area far greater than your backyard or this botanical garden. And so people need to be informed when they're making their decisions. They need to do some research before they just decide to plop a plant in a place. That's the responsible thing to do. And if you like this plant, what is it about it that you like? And is there a native plant that can accomplish that for you? And if there isn't, at the very least, what does this do in the environment?
Yeah.
And change is difficult because you're talking about an entity that people already love. And a great example is when we had Duke Farms on, because what Duke Farms was and what Duke Farms is now are two completely different things. So that's a difficult step to take, especially when you have people that are already passionate and in love with that. So given that and the direction that you're headed with it, how do you think the Arboretum will evolve, say, 10 years from now? If someone were to step in the Arboretum, we have a time machine, and it's now 2030, and you're stepping in the Arboretum. What do you see as change, given
Good
what
question.
we're just talking about?
I hope that that we will have eliminated I have this dream of sculptures of botanically accurate sculptures of invasive plants instead of the invasive plants themselves, so we can still teach about them, but they're not causing problems.
I like that.
So.
I like that idea. It could be the invasives, like a silk collection almost, maybe sculpture.
Something like that. Shows the seeds and the leaves as opposite or alternate or whatever, that you can still learn about it, and that we are that. Because we do have an aging collection. A lot of our trees are old. This garden has been there for more than 100 years. Wow. And that as we have to plan for succession of plants, that we are focused more on the ecology and enhancing where we are, rather than to having a certain number of different types of plants, or a representative selection of all the different genera out there, or something like that. I would much rather pay more attention to our ecology, and as we do that, inspire our community to do the same.
And you mentioned that the garden's been there for 100 years. Can you go into a little bit of the history of the garden and what brought it about in the first place, and where it's been already?
Sure. So what is now Temple Ambler? It's the Ambler campus of Temple University. It's a satellite campus, and it's about 187 acres. And about 87 of that, back in 1911, was purchased by a woman named Jane Bown Haynes. And she had a goal to start the Pennsylvania School of Horticulture for Women. She had learned about these schools of teaching women specifically a vocation in Europe. And so she had this ambition to start a school like that here in the United States. There was one that was started around the same time up in Massachusetts as well. But so we were one of only two in the country. And so that's how this started, was as the Pennsylvania School of Horticulture for Women in 1911. And so they had, I think, 4 graduates the first year. And so this was the school was founded with the idea that students learn by doing. So they would learn in a classroom, and then they would go out onto the grounds and put what they learned in theory into practice. And that is what it had to be. And so the grounds that are now the Arboretum were always hands-on, a place for hands-on education, experiential learning, and that continues today. And so even to the point where they had a greenhouse complex, and they wanted to they needed a head house for their greenhouse complex. So the women in the school built the head house and the cold frames and everything they needed. They built it.
Wow.
And it's just great. I have this one picture that I just love. It's from the 1920s, and the women's uniform was this long wool skirt and this long sleeve cotton shirt, and they're out in a field, and they're getting a demonstration in how to break up the subsoil, because the whole area used to be agriculture. And but it's how to break up the subsoil using dynamite. And so there's just soil flying all around them, and like the person's like tie is blowing, and it's incredible. But it just shows like how practical this was, and how, I mean, at the time that was modern technology, right? So so that's what it's always been, is this place to put theory into practice. And so what I love about that is that we've never been a museum to the gardens that were designed there or planned there. It was always meant to show the latest techniques, the newest trends, the newest color combinations, whatever it is, that is part of the purpose of the Arboretum. So it's nice to have that as the background. The fact that it was also designed originally as a school of horticulture for women is also, I think, important in the history of horticulture, especially in the Philadelphia region.
That's very progressive for the time. And the Arboretum is still very progressive to this day. I love that it's, from what you're explaining, is not what I would traditionally think of as an Arboretum.
I think that we benefit a lot from having students, because the students, and this is what I love about teaching and love about being part of an Arboretum at a college campus, is that they are always challenging you to be better, to be more aware, to be responsive. As soon as students see the spotted lanternfly, they're like, I get an email say, "Hey, Kathy, what are you doing about this?" And so it's always a challenge, but in the very best way, because it means that we are being responsive, and the students feel empowered to ask those things and know that they can make change, and that it is their place too. And so I think that sets us apart in a lot of ways from some more traditional public gardens.
And the answer to this may be no, but is there any significant change that you can think of that was brought at the Arboretum, that was brought about by the students?
That's a good. I've only been there for 3 years, so I'm not sure. But I will say that our junior landscape design build studio creates the flower show exhibit every year. And 2 of our gardens that are permanent gardens now were designed by them.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so they can come back forever and see these gardens in place. And both of those they are both our stormwater management gardens. And so even so many years apart, it reflects the importance that our curriculum places on sustainability and using plants to solve problems. And so in that way, they've had quite a bit of influence. But if there's been drastic changes or something implemented because of students, I'm not sure.
I love the blend of legacy and progression, that there's a strong foundation, but it seems like the Arboretum keeps moving forward. And when I think of that, you have to be adaptable. Like 30 years ago, if you would have told me that Longwood Gardens was going to have a meadow, I would have been like, nah, yeah, okay. But there it is, and it's a big draw to Longwood Gardens. So I like that there's a very strong foundation and very strong core values, but you keep moving forward and you keep progressing. Because it could quite easily just try to stand on its laurels and just say, this is who we are. You can come or not,
Yeah.
Now, Kathy, you mentioned, I think I cut you off before you were actually going to answer this earlier. You mentioned you'd only been there for 3 years. What brought you to the Arboretum?
Well, I I've spent my career in places where I could work to connect people to plants. And so I started out in Newark, New Jersey. I have my degree from the Longwood Graduate Program in Public Horticulture Administration, and have all these jobs, but not at public gardens, but related to public horticulture. So whether I was a horticulturist for a municipal park system, which I was in a couple of places, or working for schools. I've taught high school VOTEC. And for anybody who teaches high school VOTEC, more power to you. I could only do it for the 10 months one time. That was it. I was not successful in that role, but it was still connecting, or trying very hard to connect people with plants. And so my path has always sort of led that way. And so, and I worked as an extension educator. You mentioned, to report the spotted lanternfly to the county extension. Mm-hmm. So I worked as that also. And so this seemed, this position at the Arboretum seemed a natural culmination of all these other experiences I've had in public horticulture and connecting people to plants, because it gave me the opportunity to still teach. It gave me the opportunity to make decisions about design and implementation, and to help put in new spaces. And it just seemed like a great match. Plus, its history as the School of Horticulture for Women was really appealing too. And Fran, you had asked about, where do I see in 20 years? Yeah. In the time that I've been here, one thing I've noticed, I've tried to find our stories. I've raised money to do interpretive signage. We don't have any signage around the gardens telling you our history or anything. And so I've been working on that. And so I've been wanting to find our stories. And one of the things that I have not been able to find, and that I hope in 20 years that we will do a better job of, is I have not been able to find the stories of people of color, of diverse audiences, of diverse participation and influence in our space. And I really think that is missing. And not because it didn't happen, but because we didn't record it or didn't tell it. And so I hope that in 20 years that not only will we be telling those stories, that we'll be acknowledging the contributions of all people in this space, but that all people will be comfortable visiting us, that we will have a more diverse audience in our programs, in our membership, in our speakers, in our leadership on our board. I think that we focus so much on the diversity of our plants and don't really think about, or haven't thought as much about, the diversity of our people. And so I hope in 20 years that we will be thinking and reflect just as much the diversity of our people.
You bring up a really good point, because it's really quite easy to get lost in the plants or your personal interpretation of the plants. But in a public space like that, it's really the public, which is diverse. Who's going to enjoy that? Who are you trying to pull in? Hopefully it's not just past stories that are brought up, but future stories too. Yeah, and
it's something that we discussed tackling through this podcast as well. As you go to all the horticultural trade shows and you go to meetings, and you don't see very many people of color, and I don't think it's because there's a lack of interest. There might be a lack of guidance, and we've been talking about having some of these groups. There's I'm going to blank on the name of it now. There's a program that was down in Maryland called, I think, Bringing Nature Black. I might be screwing up the name there. And it was all about black horticulture and promoting that. And there's another group I just found out about a couple weeks ago that I think is called, I don't remember the name. It's like Afro Black. I'll have to look it up and I'll figure it out. But it's another thing. It's just throughout all, really all of nature and nature careers, you find a lack of diversity. And like I said, I don't think it's because of the interest. We've talked about having an episode all revolving around that for a while. And we kind of said, you know what, in light of things that are happening right now, we don't want to look like we're taking advantage of that.
But it's something we talk about. 30 years ago, when I started in the industry, you could go to a trade show and you could count the number of women attending that trade show on one hand, unless that we're actually in the industry, not including wives. And it's changed. It's greatly changed, and it's nice to see, especially how it was at that time compared to now. So we're hoping that in the near future we can have one of these organizations on to have those discussions.
And I don't think that it would be unreasonable to sort of capitalize on the momentum of the movement right now. And you would probably be raising awareness to an audience that might not know about it. So I think that it's a great time to do it. I think
the organization I just heard about is called Outdoor Afro. So I really did goof up pretty bad. Outdoor Afro, and it's actually a national organization. And I'd actually heard an interview with the president or lead coordinator of it. But they have branches in San Francisco and Seattle, and even like Newark and New York City and Philadelphia. There's branches here, and we should probably reach out to one of them to have them on, because it's all about their slogan on the front of their website is "Where Black People Nature Meet," and it's from hearing the interview with them, it was okay. They wanted to get more people of color out into nature. A lot of what was holding them back is they didn't know where to go, or they didn't want to be the only ones there. So you actually have like a guide system that was bringing people who otherwise probably would not go out into nature, and they're kayaking on the Hackensack River and going on hikes and doing all kinds of really cool stuff that I like to do as well.
That we take for granted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. So let's make that a resolution. Let's hopefully we get someone from that organization to come on our podcast. Yeah. I would love that.
I think also in the next 20 years, I think it would be great if us botanical gardens and I know, the Ambler Arboretum is not doing a great job of this now, but we are working towards this now, is acknowledging also where systemic racism is in our organizations, but also how we've contributed to the problem. For example, we have plants with labels that are, those labels, those names are colonized names. Somebody came over here and decided this will be the name of this plant, even though indigenous populations had already had names for those plants. So I think that we can also do a great job of acknowledging that and educating about it, recognizing the contributions and the foundation that so many people of color, indigenous persons have done for us. And so, I hope that in the 20 years that our garden will reflect that better as well.
I love that idea. It's funny because one of the questions I had wanted to ask you was, with your background and coming to the Arboretum, what are you bringing to the Arboretum that's making a difference? But I think you've answered that question, unless there's things in numerous ways. Not saying like what legacy will you leave when you're not there, but are there other things that your perspective of your background and where you've come to get there that you're seeing make a difference at the Arboretum today?
I think that I'm really lucky in that my boss allows us to try new things and is okay with failure. And so that allows us to try programs that maybe are not for our typical audiences, or outside of what we would normally highlight or have used the gardens for in the past. And so I think her willingness to let me do that and my willingness to take the leap, I think, is allowing us to do new and different things at the Arboretum. I also, as I've gone through my career, have become less afraid of uncomfortable conversations. And so I think hopefully that will help also to continue a momentum of raising awareness about what else public gardens can do, besides talking about plants and teaching plants and being a beautiful place to visit, and doing the research and maintaining genetic diversity and all of that botanical gardens already do. What else can we do to make this world better? And so hopefully I can help with that too.
I would like to say as well that I feel very fortunate that I have employers that are okay with failure. You're okay with failure, right, Tom?
For the most part, but I'm not your employer.
That's true. At least I think they are.
Yeah.
I guess. I guess we'll find out. Yeah. So you did mention earlier that the gardens are free gardens, public arboretum, but you can be a member, correct?
You can, yes. We have memberships, and so you can become a member online. You can find us at arboretum.temple.edu, and you can find membership there. There's different levels, and being a member is a way to support the Arboretum. We are free all the time, and so we can't offer free admission or anything like that to members, but we do offer discounted programs and advance notice, and really you're just supporting a great organization. So yeah, we have that, and then we have other ways to support too.
And you have some great programs. Mm-hmm. You have some really great programs, and we would really like to talk about some of those.
Okay.
Tell us more about Hort Camp.
Oh, so this is last year. I had this bright idea. We offer summer camps, not the Arboretum, but the university at the Ambler campus offers summer camps, and they're educational camps, and they're usually week long and they're all day. And so I asked if we could try this horticulture careers exploration summer camp. Nothing sounds more fun than that, right? So I was like, can we just try it? And I said we could. And so we did. They let me try it, and we didn't even change the name. And we got registrants, and it was great. And so we had botanical illustrator teach them about perspective and drawing plants. We had landscape architects. We had a beekeeper. We have an arborist. They held a chainsaw without a chain on it. They learned how to throw climbing ropes. They helped pull weeds with the horticulture staff at the Arboretum. And so each day they focus on a couple of different career options. And the whole point was to raise awareness about the green industry or horticulture careers, because they're not talked about a lot by counselors in schools. Of course, Seed Your Future is out there that is trying to raise awareness among middle schoolers of horticulture careers. But I just wanted an opportunity to show the diversity of the offerings and how fun it could be, and that you could be outside and you're always active. And it went really well. And so we were going to do it again this year, but an online version is just not the same.
No, that you want that to be hands-on. I think that's where you win a lot of people over.
Yeah, and that's, you think about if they're going to go into that career, a lot of those jobs are very hands-on. I know. Yeah. We did a virtual tour of our seed fields, and I would have been an okay tour guide, but I thought my brother and Lydia would be really, really good tour guides, just because my brother really knows the insects, and he's a natural ham with the camera. So he's good at getting really close to all the insects and catching stuff. He probably tried to sting himself once or twice.
And he's really good and comfortable with that too.
Yeah. It was so good. The kids love that. And so when we couldn't go someplace to visit, the campers and I went on a virtual tour, and one of them was the seed fields at Pinelands, which was amazing because they are in full bloom, and it just was incredible to see all those flowers in one place, and that we could interact live with the tour guide and ask questions. It was just great. And so we mixed those kinds of experiences with hands-on in the garden, kind of help. They did propagation. They planted coleus that they cut into our aquaponics lab. And then we also visited virtually a zoo horticulturist and watched them as they fed forsythia to giraffe, so it was just a wide range, just to show all of these different things that kids could do, because so many kids that I talk to, or so many students in school that I talk to, they're either changing their major because they just found out about it because they were at Temple, or they didn't even find out about it until much later in trying to figure out what they want to do for a living.
And there's definitely a shift. When I started at the nursery 13 years ago, the local high school is literally a mile down the road from us, and we would take on work study students. And I think my first year here, we had 13 work study students. It was an unreal number. We don't get work study students anymore. We're really happy if we get one. And it just doesn't happen. A couple years ago we had 2, and we're like, wow, maybe it's going to make a comeback, and it really doesn't. It just seems. And Tom and I have talked about this and talked about how we can encourage this. Actually, we're missing a generation of kids that didn't go to college. I'm not saying college is a bad thing. But college is a great thing, but it's not for everyone. Not everyone's going to take that path. Myself being one of them, I didn't go to college. I started at a nursery right out of high school, and that wasn't uncommon at the time that I did it. It's very uncommon now. And we want to encourage that. You know, it's made a very good living for myself and a lot of other people I know.
And I think what's lost with a lot of people, especially in this field with a college experience, is it's a career that's really not spent in like 99% indoors. You're, even for Fran and myself, where we're primarily in the office, we're going outside and seeing stuff, and we're doing site visits. We're outside quite a bit. And for that kind of career, you need to have that outside hands-on learning, which is one of the great things that where I went to school at SUNY Cobleskill and where you went to school, Kathy, at Delval, that's where they really excel. Is I remember my classes, I got to have an hour-long lecture about it's a hydroponics class. You'd learn, okay, this is all the nutrient ratios, and you got to add all this stuff, and you need this kind of lights, and then you'd actually go and do it. And it almost seemed like free labor at the time because we were just putting together all these hydroponic systems for this hydroponic class. But then a month later, I think it was like 25 days later, we grew our own lettuce, or we grew our own microgreens, and we're selling it to the school cafeteria. And I learned the science behind it, but I also did it, and I wasn't stuck if I needed to go and do it later in life.
One of the things I love that I found out online was one of our previous guests, Dr. Jay Allen, when we were looking up the information to post a link about his research online, the site came up with student reviews, and he's at Raritan Valley Community College. Favorably high reviews, and some of them started out what you think was going to be a bad review, but they were great reviews. It's like, you know what? We do a lot of field trips, and they're on evenings, and they're on weekends, and they're mandatory. But I learned so much, and they were so important, and I'm glad that he made us do that. You know, and it was, I think a lot of that gets lost sometimes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the knowledge I have now to do my job if it wasn't for all the years with the hands-on knowledge outside.
Which it sounds like you guys are doing at Temple Ambler as well, especially getting out in the Arboretum and having to do like landscape design and actually see those designs come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. And we partner with we have a campus Society for Ecological Restoration chapter. We have a campus ASLA chapter, and so we partner up with them too, and they can take on projects. So it really is their classroom, and they'll work with advisors or work with me, and can really work to make change. They come up with ideas, of ways that they want to be better stewards of the campus or have the campus in a better shape after they've left. And so we work with them on it. And so we do definitely offer that hands-on. And I agree that that having that is essential to understanding sort of the rewards of this career. And tech schools, the career and technical schools that have horticulture programs, I think can be sources for some great students who don't have ambitions to go to college but are just wonderful and have so much to learn and so much willingness to learn that I think that they could do so much. And it's unfortunate that so many programs are being closed or reduced because of a lack of interest. And I think the lack of interest is just like you said at the beginning, Tom, about education and just not even knowing that these are careers. There's so many assumptions about landscapers, and that's all that this can be. And and that's great, but there's so much more too.
One of the things that's very satisfying for me is my youngest son, who is currently working at the nursery, originally wanted to work here. He started working here last year just because he wanted to make money, and he knew that I could probably get him a job here. That was his main motivation. That was his main motivation. I love seeing how much he loves his job. It's really won him over, and had he not had that opportunity, he would have never have discovered that love for doing this kind of work.
And I think the other mission that I have is to raise awareness among the school counselors. So I know when I was thinking about going into horticulture, because I was the one daughter who really liked to be outside and help pull weeds and all of that stuff with my mom. My mom said, "You can't go to school for this." And then we looked through it. Back then, it was this giant catalog of colleges, not the internet. And so it was like, oh, you can go to school for this. And my guidance counselor, talked me out of being an FFA or going to tech school for horticulture because I was in honors. And then he said, you shouldn't go to Del Val because you're in honors classes. And I'm just like,
Wow.
why are you talking out of this thing I love to do?
Mm-hmm.
And when I sit around with some advisory groups, sometimes it's not an unusual experience to try and be talked out of doing this for a living. And so I think we really also need to raise awareness about that.
And you brought up the tech schools too. And when I was in grad school, I originally went for agricultural education, and I had a really cool experience up there because they had a program at the local tech school where they actually took the best and brightest kids out of those schools and put them into their local tech school for it. I think they took their math class and their English class at their local high school, and they all drove to the local tech school for the rest of the day, and it was all heavy science based courses where they were actually going a lot of times to college classes to learn a lot of this stuff. And I think it was specialized in veterinary medicine, food science, and horticulture. And they were interacting with college professors, and they had a teacher who really guided them through a lot of this stuff too. But I think it was a class of 15 or 16 kids. 4 or 5 of them were valedictorians of their schools. It was the best and brightest, and they were going to Ivy League schools all over the country. If not Ivy League, they were going to these really great institutions. But they got that opportunity in high school going to a tech school, which that's not what people think when they think of tech schools.
Exactly.
And it kind of sounds like
it has
a situation that would have been.
It's a bad stigmatism.
Yeah.
But tech schools have changed from the time I was in school to where they are now also. But I look at, I know when I was in high school, my predetermined notions of what a tech school was. Yeah. And I look back at my former classmates that went to tech school and where they are now. I was like, man, they were so much smarter than I was. They made good decisions in life, and they're doing very well, and I'm happy for them.
My wife's a high school English teacher, so we have these conversations all the time because and her brother's a perfect example because he's makes a lot more money than either of us do. And he's 26 years old. He's working in construction, but he's a diesel mechanic. He knows all kinds of stuff. He got hooked up with the right company,
and he's happy.
And he didn't need to learn, or he didn't need to read Shakespeare and all that kind of stuff. He needed to learn how to read instruction manuals and that kind of thing that you'd get at a tech school. And she's always says references him saying, man, think of where he could have been had he taken that route instead of having to sit through his regular public high school and be a really bad student and get told he was a bad student all the time.
But he's excelling.
Yeah. And there's a lot of horticultural people that are that way as well, that are kind of getting left behind in their local high schools because they don't have the programs, or they just don't know that the options are out there to do these kind of things.
I don't know.
Exactly. And it's great that there's the option that if you want to go to college, that you have that option. If you want to go to tech school, that you have that option. And what we really need to do is just make sure that us as the people in these professions now are banding together to raise awareness about these professions, that there are jobs here that you can make a living and be happy doing this. And, I envision this army of people going into schools and talking about this.
Well, I had a weird. I can't remember if I ever mentioned this on the podcast before, but in junior high, when you take the test of what professions you should look at as you get older, I think it was 9th grade, we took the test, and mine came out that I should be a botanist. And I laughed. I laughed. And I was like, yeah, right. I was like, well, look at this test is so flawed. I'm like, it says I should be a botanist. I remember talking with the guidance counselor, and they tried to, I was a gifted honor student. They're like, well, this is where your tendencies lie. Maybe you should look at it. And I remember just laughing. And here I am, And I think back at that moment a lot, actually. And I'm like, come on, is this coincidental or what? But it's I think about that a lot. And education really is such a large aspect of what we do and who we are. What are some of the educational aspects, programs that you have at the Arboretum?
So we do a speaker series. So that is once a month we get speakers. So this is where Tom participated a couple of years ago.
Tom was a speaker. Wow.
Yes.
So
And
Tom, what did you talk about?
Oh, it was I think it was native plants and pollinators. And
Yep.
I went out to our seed fields where we have millions of flowers, and I just took a bunch of pictures of all different plants and pollinators and threw them up on the screen. And I'm not an entomologist by any means, so I was like, this is some kind of bee. But no, it was actually, I was really happy with the crowd's response, because even a couple of them said, hey, you should have asked us questions. If you didn't know something, you put a question mark, you should have asked us. And I meant to do that, and I forgot. But no, it was a very knowledgeable crowd as well, of people who wanted to learn and were really interested in this stuff already.
And what are some of the other topics or intricacies about the speaker series?
Oh, well, so we have 3 areas of focus at the Arboretum. We try to focus on the healing power of plants and nature and gardening. We try to focus on the history of women in horticulture and the contributions of women to horticulture and sustainability. So we try to have our speakers tie in with those topics. And but we run the gamut. I think we had one last fall. I did one on winter interest, plants for winter interest, and we had one about Josephine, Napoleon's wife, and her contribution to roses and the horticulture of roses and the introduction of new roses, which I had no idea about. So of course that's a woman's contribution to horticulture. So they do really, it's a different, we've done landscape lighting, sustainable landscape lighting options. So it really runs the whole gamut, and there's not the same audience twice. And, during this COVID time, we've really had to think about how can we offer these differently. And also, I think it's great because now I'm thinking, how come we haven't always offered an alternative way of participating in this? How come we haven't always made it so you can Zoom in some way, or, so everybody who wants to can participate.
It's interesting you said that, because like we've talked about our community here before, and it's a very small, pretty tight-knit community. And our local pastor comes and checks in on us every once in a while, especially when my parents miss church. That's when he tends to show up.
That is true. That is very true.
But so he actually stopped by today, and he was saying, because they weren't allowed to congregate for a long time, and they were doing a lot. They were still holding services, but doing it over, I guess, Facebook video. And he was saying the metrics, they're having 500 people show up, but the church is only big enough for like 130. So he's like, we were having way more people watch just having it online. So they're also looking at making that a permanent fixture, just always having it broadcast, because not everyone, they don't know when they're going to be able to have a full church again.
What I love about it too is Neil is such a great speaker. He
Yes.
really is. But unless you physically go to that church, you're not going to be presented with that. You're not going to have that experience. I love that they found a way to get how great of a pastor he is in front of other people. And I don't attend that church. I'm just saying, like, from knowing Neil, he's a great pastor, and I love that they found a way to get him in front of people and make that congregation bigger. Yeah. It's nice, and you have that opportunity as well with the Arboretum.
I think if there's a little bit of a silver lining, it's this having to problem solve and think outside of the box of what we used to do, and realizing that this doesn't have to be temporary, that this can be a new way of being more inclusive and accessible. And so that's been really exciting to think about.
It's funny because we just had a Zoom meeting before this on what are the silver linings that have been presented because of COVID-19, and how has your business changed, and
the big mantra is, you're not going back to work, you're going forward to work. Take what we've learned and what really worked from these changes we're forced to make, and move forward with them, and find the things that really weren't working before and definitely didn't work with this, and just toss them, ditch them, get rid of them.
All the great opportunity. I think one of the lines was, what got you here isn't going to work anymore. Yeah. So forget them, and how are you going to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very true. So, that brings up a great point, is how has COVID-19 affected the Arboretum. You're presently not open. That's correct?
Mm-hmm. That is correct. Yeah, we closed March 12th, and with 3 hours notice, and had to leave, and then we're expecting. I'm still working from home most of the week, and so we've been closed, but we have no gates, and we have no way to keep people out. So people who haven't visited us before are finding us now because we're close by and they can't really go to many places, or they couldn't, and so they've wandered in, and so we're technically not open, but we technically can't be completely closed either. So we're not functioning in the way that we would normally, and we'll be open back up on August 24th, and that's when the students come back, and we're just open as a campus again. So we will be back open then. And so it's really we had to cancel programs until we kind of refigured what we were going to do. The staff was out for a month and a half in spring, so that presented a challenge, but luckily it was such a mild winter, they were able to get a lot of sort of the basic work done of mulching and that kind of thing, so the spring wasn't as bad as it could have been. So that was nice. But and then we don't have an admission fee or raise funds that way, so our fundraising is dependent on, and we raise funds. All of our student workers are paid through funds that we raise. All of the plant material, the tools, anything that we need to operate the garden besides salaries of the staff are through donations, through fundraising. And so the connections that we make through these programs are how we get people to buy in and support us beyond just attending a program. And so losing those connections over this period of time and the opportunity to make more connections has really been challenging. And so trying to figure out how we keep the connections we have made, even when you can't come and visit and participate, and then how to continue to make new ones. That's been, I think, the biggest challenge for us. Also, a public garden isn't a public garden without its public. So
that's very true.
Being motivated to keep everything looking beautiful when people can't come and visit it is a struggle, but we see the light now, and we know that we'll have our public back and our students back in a couple of weeks. So we're really excited about that. Well,
knowing that you have a date when you're opening back up, do you have any events that you're excited about in the near future?
Well, we have our annual garden party, which is our one big fundraiser for the year. And it's always it's usually the second Saturday in September. And, it's our biggest fundraiser of the year, and it kind of supports the rest of the year's activities. And this year, we're not sure how it's going to look, because even though we're in a different county, we have to follow Philadelphia guidelines, because that's where Temple is, and they're a little more strict or cautious with what's going on. And so trying to figure out how that's going to look, where normally there would be 125, 150 people in our formal garden area. So we're offering a virtual option. We're doing a Zoom. It's called Ambler and Bloom, our event, and we're offering a Zoom bloom. Oh, nice. And bloom boxes full of all kinds of local goodies, because our businesses that used to support us, they were out of business. They were not in operation for months. Yeah. And so to ask them for donations for silent auctions and things like that didn't seem very much like a community. And so we're trying to support them by including items from them in our boxes to give to our funders and our participants. And so we're really looking forward to seeing how this works. It's the 20th. The Arboretum has been officially an Arboretum for 20 years this year. So it's our 20th birthday.
So it's a big year. It's a big year.
Yeah. And I said next year we'll celebrate our 21st birthday with a whole bunch of local breweries and some food trucks. Hopefully this will be passed by then.
I like where your head's at. I like
we might
that.
have to go to that.
Yeah.
We'll do a podcast on a remote. I don't even know what you call it. We'll podcast.
You are, yes, that sounds great. Yes, let's put it in the books.
All right, I like that. I like that. All right, I'm in. So you mentioned how important donations are. Mm-hmm. How can our listeners get involved? How can they help or make a donation, and what are some ways that they can do that?
Sure. So there's all kinds of ways to get involved with the Arboretum. Of course, one is donations. Just making a donation and supporting the Arboretum and our mission is great. We can always use volunteers to help out in the gardens, but also volunteers to help guide our organization, I'm always looking for members of our Arboretum Advisory Committee. We speakers, if you wanted to be a presenter, have something that you'd like to talk about, we're always looking for presenters. And members, if you wanted to become a member or just attend programs, all of that supports us. All of that builds our network. All of that helps spread our message and just raise awareness about the Arboretum even existing. So there's lots of ways.
Awesome. So we always end, and we've asked you if you've listened to the podcast, and you have, so you know what question we're going to ask you. At least I hope you do.
Yes.
We always end on this one. Not everyone answers it. Some people will not commit. I think some of our guests have commitment issues.
Yeah.
What is your favorite native plant?
All right. So I'm sure a lot of people have said it's hard to pick just one.
It is.
Right.
And we'll give you more than one.
Okay.
We'll let you narrow it down.
So I think my favorite underused plant is bladder nut.
Ooh.
Staphylia triphyla. So this was a new plant that I learned when I moved to this area where I live now.
Okay.
And I just love it. And I think that, and the deer don't eat it, which is a plus, I think. And I just feel like it's underused, and I'm not sure why. It has these great little white flowers in the spring, these really ornamental pods. I think it needs a new marketing person because bladder nut, I don't think is that appealing.
That is I just looked it up. That's a really unique looking flower and then seed pod.
I have never seen that on a plant list for a project.
Me either. I've never seen it, and it's even hard to find for sale, even among specialty native plant places.
All right.
So
we have a new mission.
Yeah.
Cool. Yes. I just love it. And so that's my favorite underused one. And then my other favorite I have to mention, because I get out, there's two that are generally considered weedy or annoying and people usually eliminate from their yards, and I carry around a soapbox with me for these two natives.
All right.
And they are the just the common blue violet and the black walnut.
Very nice. Very
so
nice.
Those are my other two favorites.
my first experience with the black walnut tree, I was probably about 20, I want to say I was about 22, 23 years old, and proceeded to have a fight with the the pods, not realizing that they stained, that the tannins. So after pelting and being pelted with them, then realizing that my clothes were ruined and I could not clean my hands.
Yes.
And I will never forget that. That's an important one. But
so I grew up in the Pine Barrens in South Jersey, and so that smell of those walnuts just takes me back to growing up in the Pine Barrens all the time. And I have to admit that my sister and I used to wing them at each other too.
they smart.
I always think
they
of that.
pack a good punch.
Yeah, they do. They do.
And I have to say that fight happened at a job. That's what we were doing at work. So I haven't done that here. You don't see me doing that.
No,
we don't have them here. I've grown up since then. All right, so it's down to the final thought. So we always give our guests the first crack at a final thought. We give you the stage, and you can say anything you want. If there's something you want to promote, if there's a message you want to get out, just something you want to summarize, now's the time. The floor is yours. You can say anything you want.
Wow, thank you. Well, I just want to encourage everybody to get out and visit public gardens. And for those of you who have clients, to use public gardens as an educational space for teaching your clients what plants will look like, how plants look together, how they mature. And I want to acknowledge that the public gardens would not be the amazing places they are without the staff that cares for them. And we have at the Arboretum, Kat and Michelle, who are our horticulture staff and just do a tremendous job through all of this, and are so knowledgeable and creative. And so without them, this place, and without the horticulture staff in so many places, they just wouldn't be as special and as important and as educational as they are. So we are part of Greater Philadelphia Gardens, which is a group that represents 36 gardens within 30 miles of Philadelphia. And so we're just one of many that each have a unique story to tell, a unique collection of plants, and something different to do. So I encourage everybody to get out and visit the public garden spaces.
I think with COVID-19, a lot of people have found or rediscovered nature, which is nice to see. So put this one on your list and make sure you go see it. You know, I have to admit, I have never been there, and it is on my list.
I can't wait to give you a tour.
Oh, all right. Now you got me hooked. Now I have to come. But I'm going anyway. That's my plan. Yeah. That's my plan. All right.
Yeah, definitely come and visit. I can't wait to see you.
I will be there. I can't wait to go. Tom, do you want me to go or do you want to go?
I can go.
All right.
We can keep switching back and forth.
I have a final thought this time.
You're not going to cop out on this one.
I got nothing.
Yeah. We kind of, I don't want to say we went off the rails. It was a really, really good conversation, but we definitely went a lot of places I don't think we were planning on going when we started coming up with ideas of where we were going to take this podcast. But one of the things we really hit on a lot was inclusivity, and whether that you're a person of color or kids or just people who don't know about the value of native plants, you have to be inclusive. You have to find ways that appeal to them to get them to join this mission. We all know, if you're listening to this, you know how important native plants are and how detrimental invasive plants can be, and we're not close enough there. We don't have enough people on our side yet to say, hey, we don't want you in our club. We need to keep growing together and making this a bigger thing before we can start saying, hey, you know what, we like what you're saying, but it's not enough. You need to come further. So
I like it.
Yeah.
You're kind of, for a second, I thought you were going to steal my final thought. Like, I was thinking in my head, I was like, he's going where I was going to go.
That's why I went first.
Well, it's somewhere on the same lines where I feel that this podcast, for the first time out of any of our podcasts, we tackled some pretty heavy subjects, which we typically don't do. Not that we steer away from them on purpose. I don't think we do. You know, we try to always give our guests the best foot forward, and you want to be giving as a host, but we talked about some things we never talk about, and I think we need to do it more often.
Yeah.
I think if you're not talking about them, you're part of the problem, and we need to do this more. And I hope our listeners like it. I hope that's a direction they would like us to go. Also, I have trouble doing it. I do. I get very uncomfortable, but that's where I think some of the good stuff comes when you're uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although
I agree.
I'm really good at making a fool out of myself when I'm uncomfortable. That's the normal outcome when I'm uncomfortable. It's usually not good, but I think I behaved this time, and we had some really good conversations. And I have to thank you for that, Kathy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You definitely led us into a lot of that and sparked a lot of things that were on my brain.
Thank you for being open to that. I think that so many of us can think very easily of a garden as a place of peace and calm and healing. But they're more than that. They're more complicated, just like everything else. And so we have to acknowledge those parts of them too. So thank you for being open to the conversation.
No,
I appreciate it.
No, and we'll definitely have to have you back on as we tackle some more of these issues in the future. And we can maybe we can make this an ongoing segment or something like that. But we do plan on, in the future, our next podcast actually. Can I leak who it is since it's the next one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to do it. I was
you were
going to do it anyway.
Sorry. So our next podcast, actually, we have Dr. Enrique Sala, National Geographer's Explorer in Residence. Did I just say National Geographic?
Yeah, you kind of said it wrong.
Yeah, National Geographic. Yeah, they knew. So about his new book, The Nature of Nature. And it's a discussion, really heady discussion, that there's things that you can't just ignore or gloss over that are going on in our world that need to be fixed. And I like that we're heading in that direction. It can't all be controversial. I like, I like to have fun too. It can't all be like, I don't want it to be too heavy all the time. I don't know that that's fun to listen to either, but I think we have to make it part of our.
Oh yeah. It's the space that we're in right now. So it's important that we don't ignore that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to steal
Oh no,
we can
you're
hear the
fine.
next.
I was just gonna say how we have a giveaway affiliated. We're giving away his book, which hasn't been released yet.
2 copies.
2 copies, and you'll at the end of that episode you'll hear how you can do it.
How you can win one of the copies. And I will say we were fortunate enough to get an advances of the book. It's a book that everyone has to read.
Yeah,
it's one of the most important books being published right now. That if you know someone and you're trying to explain to them why it's important to make a difference or make a change, this is, it's right up there with Dr. Talamy's Bringing Nature Home.
Yeah, I think it's probably even on a, not basic isn't the right word. It reaches a broader base because it's really on a global scale. It's talking about things on a global scale, not just on a smaller or nationwide scale, but it really gives you some really good examples of things that are actually happening in the world that are issues and solutions.
So, the thing is, there are solutions. There's a lot of science, but there's a lot of solutions, and it's kind of hard to refute these solutions.
Yes.
It really is. He makes a very strong case. There's a lot of great cases throughout the globe. So it doesn't, we tend to focus on land or our streams, but we don't tend to take it one step further to the oceans and how what we do affect other nations and what they do affect us. And it's just on a global scale, and it breaks it down really. He guides you through step by step. If you've never been involved in ecology or horticulture, it's a good way to.
And we've had this one in our pocket for a while now. We had to keep it secret, so we're really happy we get to tell people about it.
Yeah, we're excited that
we
it's
even
coming
got
up.
contacted by a publicist.
Woo!
We hit the big time.
We hit the big time.
but yeah, that's really it for today. It's always nice to feature so many of the organizations that really need people to get involved in different ways. It's even nicer to have them on when there's someone that you're friends with and you can reconnect with. Like, I don't think I've spoken to you in a while, other than a couple of emails trying to coordinate this. So it was nice to actually talk to you.
I agree.
Virtually again.
Yeah.
And
yes, the same. Thank you so much.
So, but we want to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoy learning about the Temple University Ambler Arboretum with Kathy Salisbury. Make sure you visit when they reopen. That was August 24th, right?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
So it'll end of summer. Make sure you go visit, and you can check out all their info at arboretum.temple.edu. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
I'd like to give a big shout-out to Stephen Marr for contributing our theme music. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery as well. And let's not forget the Native Plants, Healthy Planet Facebook group. I would love for our listeners to weigh in on this one, especially with some of the topics.
And other places they might want us to go.
Yeah, that would be great. Maybe we can make that a topic. What's your favorite arboretum or public garden to go to that you visit? I like that idea.
Yeah.
I like that idea. So let's keep the conversation going there.
Yeah, you can listen to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out here on Podbean, Apple Podcasts. Leave a 5-star review while you're there. Not gonna give too much away here, but maybe that's how you win a book.
It might be.
Could be how you could get a free book in the next couple weeks. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or hey Alexa, play the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast.
I just found out that your grandmother has been listening to the podcast.
I didn't even know that. By
saying to Alexa, play the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast. She took your advice.
Yeah. So, well, thanks everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Kathy, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today and talking with us. I truly loved our conversation today.
Me too. Thank you very much.
No problem. Anytime. And thanks again, everyone. We will see you again next time. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.